The coffee was still warm when my world collapsed. I sat in my kitchen at 11:47 p.m., staring at my phone screen like it might suddenly start making sense. Emily's Instagram story glowed back at me, a perfect beach sunset, her radiant smile, and Kellen Pierce's arm wrapped around her waist like he owned her. Sister's weekend in Portland, she'd told me 3 days ago, kissing my cheek with those soft lips that apparently lied as easily as they breathed. Just need some space to clear my head, Jack. You understand, right? I understood, all right. I understood that my wife of 6 years was a goddamn liar. My name is Jack Avery. I'm 38, a marine engineer who spent the last decade designing boat hulls and harbor systems for this sleepy Maine coastal town. I fix things that are broken, solve problems that seem impossible. But sitting there in my craftsman home, surrounded by the life we'd built together, I realized I'd missed the biggest problem of all. My marriage had been sinking for months, and I'd been too blind to see the water rushing in. I screenshot the photo before she could delete it. Then I opened our joint banking app and froze every account we shared. Next, I changed my Facebook status to single and posted a photo of myself raising a beer to the camera with the caption, "Cheers to new beginnings." My phone rang within 10 minutes. "Jack? Jack, what the hell is this?" Emily's voice cracked through the speaker. In the background, I could hear waves and laughter, the same beach from her Instagram story. "Why did you freeze our accounts? Why does Facebook say you're single?" I took a long sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "Well, Emily, I figured since you're exploring your options in Portland with Kellen Pierce, I should probably start exploring mine too." The silence that followed was deafening. When she finally spoke, her voice had dropped to a whisper. "How did you—" "Instagram story, sweetheart. You might want to check your privacy settings next time you decide to cheat on your husband." "Jack, please let me explain. It's not what it looks like. Kellen just—" "Save it." I stood up, pacing to the window that overlooked our small garden. Emily had planted those roses 3 springs ago, back when she still pretended to love me. "You wanted space? Congratulations. You've got all the space you need now. You can't just freeze our accounts. That's my money too." "Our money, Emily. The money I earned while you played house and fucked around with your boss." The words came out colder than I intended, but I didn't regret them. "You'll get your half when the lawyers sort it out." She started crying then, big, theatrical sobs that might have worked on me 6 months ago. Now they just sounded like manipulation. "Jack, please. Come home. We can talk about this like adults." "I am home. This is my house, remember? The one I've been paying the mortgage on while you've been having your little adventure." I walked to our bedroom, pulling her suitcase from the closet. "Your stuff will be on the porch when you get back. The locks will be changed." "You bastard! You can't just throw me out." "Watch me." I hung up and turned off my phone. The next morning, I drove to Emily's office at Pierce Technologies, the startup where she worked as head of human resources. Kellen Pierce owned the company, inherited money mixed with tech bro arrogance, the kind of man who thought the world owed him everything he wanted, including other men's wives, apparently. I didn't go inside. Instead, I sat in my truck across the street, watching the building's glass facade reflect the morning sun. Emily's silver Honda pulled into the parking lot at 8:15 a.m., right on schedule. She looked tired, stressed. Good. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me at Dockside Tavern at 7 p.m. Come alone." I typed back, "No." Another buzz. "Jack, please. I'll explain everything. It's complicated." "It's really not complicated at all, Emily. You're fucking your boss. Pretty simple math. There are things you don't understand. About us. About our marriage." I stared at that text for a long moment, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Our marriage is over. Understand that. But even as I typed those words, I knew I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Emily thought she could just walk away from 6 years, take half of everything I'd worked for, and ride off into the sunset with her rich boyfriend. She had another thing coming. I drove to the marina where my old friend Gordy Hutchins worked as the harbor master. Gordy was ex-police, the kind of man who knew where all the bodies were buried in our small town. If anyone could help me figure out how to make this right, it would be him. Jack. Gordy looked up from his clipboard as I walked down the dock. Heard through the grapevine that you and Emily are having some troubles. Troubles. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what they're calling adultery these days? Gordy's expression darkened. Ah, shit. I'm sorry, man. I heard rumors, but I hope they weren't true. They're true. Caught her red-handed on social media. She's been playing house with Kellen Pierce. That entitled prick. Gordy spat into the harbor water. Always thought he was better than the rest of us. His daddy's money bought him that fancy company, but it can't buy him class. I need a favor, Gordy. Name it. I need to know everything about Kellen Pierce. Where he goes, what he does, who he talks to. Everything. Gordy studied my face carefully. You planning something stupid, Jack? I'm planning something smart. There's a difference. He nodded slowly. I'll make some calls. But Jack, whatever you're thinking of doing, make sure you can live with it afterward. I shook his hand and headed home. Emily's car was in the driveway, and I could hear her moving around inside, probably packing her things. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, steeling myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. She was in the bedroom when I walked in, folding clothes into a suitcase with mechanical precision. Her eyes were red from crying, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. Jack. She turned to face me, and I saw something desperate in her expression. We need to talk. No, we don't. Please, just listen to me for 5 minutes. Let me explain. Explain what? How you've been lying to me for months? How you've been screwing your boss while I worked 60-hour weeks to pay for this house? What exactly needs explaining, Emily? She sat down on the edge of our bed, my bed now, and buried her face in her hands. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're having an affair with Kellen Pierce. Yes, but nothing. That's all I need to know. She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. I love him, Jack. Those 4 words hit me like a physical blow. I'd expected the affair, the lies, even the betrayal. But hearing her say she loved him, that was a knife I hadn't seen coming. How long? I asked quietly. 6 months. 6 months. I nodded, processing that information. Our anniversary was 7 months ago. We went to that bed and breakfast in Bar Harbor. You told me you'd never been happier. I meant it at the time. No, you didn't. You were already thinking about him, weren't you? Already planning your exit strategy. Emily stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. It wasn't like that. It just happened. We were working late on the quarterly reports, and I don't want the details. I walked to the window, looking out at the garden again. Those roses would bloom again this spring, but Emily wouldn't be here to see them. Just pack your shit and get out. Where am I supposed to go? I turned back to her, and she must have seen something in my eyes that made her take a step backward. I assume Kellen has room for you. He's got that big house up on the bluff, right? Plenty of space for his new pet. Don't talk about me like that. I'll talk about you however I want. You lost the right to my respect when you decided to cheat on me. Emily finished packing in silence. I watched her move through our house, my house, collecting the pieces of her life. When she reached for a framed photo of us from our wedding day, I spoke up. Leave it. It's my wedding photo, too. Your wedding photo is with your new husband. This one stays here. She dropped the frame back on the dresser and zipped up her suitcase. At the front door, she turned back to me one last time. I'm sorry, Jack. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did it anyway. She nodded, tears falling freely now. I did it anyway. After she left, I walked through the house, taking inventory of the damage. Her absence was everywhere. Empty spaces on bookshelves, missing toiletries in the bathroom, gaps in the closet where her clothes used to hang. But the house still felt like mine. More mine than it had in months, actually. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat in my living room, planning my next move. Emily thought she could just walk away clean, start fresh with her rich boyfriend, while I picked up the pieces of my shattered life. She was wrong about that. Dead wrong. Gordy called the next morning with information that made my coffee taste better than it had in months. "Your boy Kellen's got some interesting habits," he said without preamble. "Docks his yacht at the marina every Tuesday and Thursday for his business meetings. Except these meetings involve a lot of champagne and very little paperwork, if you catch my drift. With Emily? Among others. Seems your wife isn't his first employee to receive special attention. There was a marketing coordinator last year who quit suddenly after a workplace incident. Then an accountant who transferred to the Boston office under mysterious circumstances." I gripped the phone tighter. Son of a bitch is a serial predator. Gets worse. I talked to my buddy Mike, who works security at the marina. Kellen's been bragging to anyone who'll listen about his new conquest, using some pretty colorful language to describe your wife's enthusiasm. Red-hot rage flooded my vision. What kind of language? The kind that would make you want to punch him in the face. Which is exactly why I'm not repeating it word for word. Gordy's voice softened. "Look, Jack, I know you're hurting. But don't let this asshole turn you into something you're not." "I'm not planning to hurt anyone, Gordy. I just want them to face some consequences for their actions." "Fair enough. What do you need from me?" "Everything you can dig up on both of them. Financial records, social media, work schedules, personal habits. I want to know these people better than they know themselves. I'll see what I can do. But Jack, be careful. Men like Kellen Pierce have lawyers on speed dial and enough money to make your life very complicated." "Let me worry about that." I spent the rest of the day researching Kellen Pierce online. Social media profiles, business articles, property records. I consumed every piece of information I could find. The picture that emerged was of a man who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. Daddy's money had bought him out of trouble his whole life, from a DUI in college to a sexual harassment complaint that mysteriously disappeared from his employment record. But money couldn't buy him protection from the truth, and I was very good at uncovering the truth. That evening, I drove to Dockside Tavern, the upscale restaurant where Emily had suggested we meet. I didn't plan to talk to her, but I wanted to see them together, to understand what I was dealing with. They were at a corner table, sharing an expensive bottle of wine and laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. Kellen was everything I wasn't. Tall, polished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my truck payment. He had the kind of casual arrogance that came from never having to work for anything in his life. Emily looked beautiful. She always had. Tonight, she wore a red dress I'd never seen before, her hair styled in loose waves that caught the restaurant's soft lighting. She was glowing with the kind of happiness I hadn't seen from her in months. It made me sick. I ordered a beer at the bar and watched them for an hour, studying their body language, their interactions. Kellen kept touching her, her hand, her shoulder, her face, like he was marking his territory. Emily giggled at his jokes, gazed into his eyes, played the part of the smitten girlfriend to perfection. When they got up to leave, I followed at a distance. They walked to Kellen's BMW, a sleek black sedan that screamed new money. He opened the door for her, such a gentleman, and they drove toward the expensive part of town where he lived. I didn't follow them home. I'd seen enough for one night. The next morning, I found a manila envelope slipped under my front door. Inside were photographs, Emily and Kellen at various locations around town, holding hands, kissing, entering and leaving hotel rooms. There was also a cell phone I'd never seen before. A note was paper-clipped to the photos. "Thought you might want to see these. The phone has some interesting text messages. A friend." My hands shook as I powered on the phone. The message history made my stomach turn. Months of explicit conversations between Emily and Kellen, planning their secret meetings, laughing about how clueless I was. But the worst messages were between Emily and her best friend Alicia, discussing their elaborate schemes to cover up the affair. Jack's working late again tonight. Perfect timing for you-know-what Emily had written. You're terrible! But seriously, how long are you going to keep this up? The poor guy has no idea, Alicia replied. Just until I figure out the best way to handle the divorce. Kellen's lawyer says I could get half of everything if I play this right. What about the house? Jack can keep it. I'll be living in Kellen's mansion anyway. Much better view of the harbor. You're so bad. But I have to admit, Kellen is a major upgrade. Jack's sweet, but he's so ordinary. Ordinary doesn't pay for vacations in the Bahamas. I read through dozens of similar exchanges, each one driving the knife deeper. They'd been planning this for months, strategizing how to maximize Emily's financial gain while minimizing her guilt. I was just an obstacle to be managed, a problem to be solved. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. I called in sick to work and spent the day formulating a plan. If Emily and Kellen wanted to play games, I'd show them how games were really played, but I wouldn't stoop to their level. I wouldn't lie, cheat, or manipulate. I'd simply make sure the truth came to light in the most public, humiliating way possible. My first stop was the post office, where Mrs. Carmichael held court behind the counter like the town's unofficial information broker. She was 73 years old, sharp as a tack, and knew everyone's business before they knew it themselves. "Jack Avery!" she exclaimed as I walked in. "I heard about you and Emily." Such a shame. She seemed like such a nice girl. Seemed being the operative phrase, I replied, approaching the counter. "Mrs. Carmichael, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Her eyes lit up with curiosity. "Of course, dear." "How long has the whole town known about Emily and Kellen Pierce?" She had the grace to look embarrassed. "Oh, Jack, I'm so sorry. We all hoped you'd figure it out on your own. Nobody wanted to be the bearer of bad news." "How long?" 3 months, maybe 4. They weren't exactly subtle about it, holding hands at the farmer's market, kissing in his car outside the grocery store. Alicia's been covering for them, telling anyone who asks that Emily's been working late or visiting her sister. "And nobody thought to tell me?" Mrs. Carmichael reached across the counter and patted my hand. "We all like you, Jack. You're a good man, but nobody wants to get involved in marital problems. It never ends well for the messenger." I nodded, understanding her position but still stinging from the betrayal. Well, the truth's out now. Emily moved out yesterday. "I'm sorry, dear. I truly am. But maybe this is for the best. You deserve someone who appreciates what a catch you are." I thanked her and left, feeling like the entire town had been watching my humiliation unfold in real time. But that embarrassment quickly transformed into something else: determination. If everyone already knew the truth, then Emily and Kellen's secret was worthless, which meant I could use it against them without worrying about collateral damage to my own reputation. I drove to the marina to find Gordy. He was in his office reviewing boat registration paperwork. "Jack, how are you holding up?" "Better than expected. I need another favor." "Shoot." "Kellen's yacht. Where exactly does he dock it?" "Slip 47 down at the far end. Why?" "I want to take a look at it. Nothing illegal, just a visual inspection." Gordy studied my face. "You sure about this?" "Positive. I just want to see how the other half lives." "Fair enough. But Jack, if anyone asks, we never had this conversation." Slip 47 was easy to find. Kellen's yacht was a 40-foot Catalina named Easy Money. Apparently the man had no sense of irony. It was beautiful, pristine, and probably worth more than my house. I walked around the dock, taking photos with my phone, memorizing details. The boat had several expensive modifications, custom electronics, and a hot tub on the rear deck. This was where Kellen brought his conquests, where he'd seduced my wife with champagne and luxury. But as I studied the yacht more closely, I noticed something interesting. The registration sticker was expired, the safety equipment looked old and possibly non-compliant, and there was a small oil leak staining the water beneath the engine compartment. As a marine engineer, I knew that boats like this required regular inspections and certifications to remain legally dockable in a commercial marina. If someone were to report these violations to the harbor master's office, Kellen might find himself with some very expensive problems. I smiled for the first time in days. This was going to be fun. I waited 3 days before making my first move. Patience was crucial. I needed Emily and Kellen to feel secure, to believe they'd gotten away clean before I started pulling their world apart. On Thursday morning, I called the Maine Department of Marine Resources and filed a formal complaint about an unsafe vessel in our marina. I provided Kellen's boat registration number, detailed descriptions of the violations I'd observed, and requested an immediate inspection. As a marine engineer with 15 years of experience, my complaint carried significant weight. The inspection was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Next, I drove to Alicia's apartment complex. Emily's best friend lived in a trendy downtown loft that screamed influencer lifestyle. Exposed brick walls, floor-to-ceiling windows, and probably twice the rent she could actually afford. I'd always suspected she was living beyond her means, and the burner phone messages confirmed it. She was borrowing money from Emily regularly, using their friendship as a personal ATM. I didn't knock on her door. Instead, I waited in the parking lot until she came out for her morning jog. Alicia was predictable. Same route every day at 7 a.m., always wearing expensive athletic wear that she probably couldn't afford. "Alicia," I called out as she stretched against her car. "Can we talk for a minute?" She looked up, startled. "Jack! Oh my God, I heard about you and Emily. I'm so sorry." "Are you?" I walked closer, studying her face. "Because I have some text messages that suggest otherwise." The color drained from her cheeks. "I don't know what you mean." I pulled out the burner phone and scrolled to one of her conversations with Emily. "Really? Because this message from last week says, and I quote, 'Jack's so clueless it's almost sad. How has he not figured this out yet?'" Alicia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Jack, I can explain." "No need. I understand perfectly. You've been helping my wife cheat on me for months, lying to my face and laughing about it behind my back." I put the phone away and stepped closer. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" "What do you want?" "Information. I want to know everything about Emily and Kellen's relationship, every detail, every plan, every conversation you've been part of." "I can't do that. Emily's my best friend. Emily's a liar and a cheat, and you've been enabling her. But I'm willing to keep your involvement quiet if you cooperate." Alicia looked around nervously, as if checking for witnesses. "And if I don't?" I smiled coldly. "Then everyone in town gets to read these text messages. Your employer, your landlord, your family, your other friends. They'll all know exactly what kind of person you really are." She stared at me for a long moment, weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Start with how it began." We sat in my truck while Alicia spilled the entire story. The affair had started at the company Christmas party, when Kellen cornered Emily in his office and made his move. Emily had been flattered by the attention, seduced by his wealth and confidence. What began as a one-night stand had evolved into a full-blown relationship. "She was going to leave you after your anniversary," Alicia admitted, but Kellen convinced her to wait, to plan it out properly. He said she could get more money in the divorce if she played it smart. "Played it smart how?" "By documenting everything. Your income, your assets, your work schedule. She's been building a case that you're an absent husband who prioritizes work over marriage." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "That's bullshit." "I know, but Kellen's lawyer said it would help her case. Make you look neglectful, give her grounds for a larger settlement." "What else?" Alicia hesitated. "They've been planning to move in together. Kellen's getting divorced too, and he wants Emily to be his new trophy wife. He's promised her a life of luxury, travel, everything she's ever wanted." "And you helped them plan all this?" "I covered for her. Provided alibis, helped her hide the evidence. I thought maybe you'd be happier without her. She hasn't been happy in your marriage for a long time, Jack." I turned to look at her directly. That wasn't your decision to make. I know, I'm sorry, I really am. Sorry doesn't fix anything, Alicia, but helping me might. I gave her my phone number and specific instructions. She would continue acting as Emily's friend, but now she'd be reporting back to me. Every plan, every conversation, every move they made, I wanted to know about it in advance. And Alicia, I said as she got out of my truck, if you warn them about this conversation, I'll make sure those text messages go viral. Understood? She nodded miserably and jogged away. The next morning, I received a call from Gordy. Jack, you need to get down to the marina. There's something you should see. I found him standing on the dock near Kellen's yacht, trying not to smile. A team of marine inspectors was crawling all over the boat, taking photos, making notes, and looking very official. What's happening? I asked innocently. Someone filed a complaint about unsafe conditions on this vessel. The inspectors found multiple violations: expired safety equipment, environmental hazards, improper electrical modifications. The boat's been red-tagged pending repairs and recertification. That's terrible. How long will that take? Months, probably. And it'll cost a fortune to bring everything up to code. Gordy glanced at me sideways. You wouldn't know anything about this complaint, would you? I'm a marine engineer, Gordy. I notice unsafe conditions wherever I see them. It's my civic duty to report them. He laughed outright. Your civic duty. Right. Well, your civic duty just cost Kellen Pierce about $50,000 and his favorite toy for the rest of the summer. I watched the inspectors work, feeling a deep satisfaction settle in my chest. This was just the beginning. That afternoon, Emily called me. Jack, we need to talk. No, we don't. It's about the divorce. My lawyer wants to schedule a meeting. Tell your lawyer to call my lawyer. You don't have a lawyer. I will by tomorrow. There was a pause. Jack, please. Can't we handle this civilly? We were married for 6 years. That has to count for something. It counted for everything to me, Emily. Apparently it counted for nothing to you. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you talking to me about your unhappiness instead of fucking your boss. Fair would have been you asking for a divorce before you started your new relationship. Fair would have been you showing me the basic respect I deserved as your husband. I know I hurt you. You destroyed me, there's a difference. I never meant for it to happen this way. But it did happen this way. And now we both have to live with the consequences. I hung up and immediately called the best divorce lawyer in town. Margaret Chen had a reputation for being thorough, aggressive, and expensive. She was exactly what I needed. Mr. Avery, she said when I explained my situation. I'll be frank with you. Adultery cases can be complicated, but if you have proof of the affair, we can use it to your advantage. I have proof. Lots of it. Good. Bring everything to my office tomorrow morning. We'll start building your case immediately. That evening, I sat in my living room with a glass of bourbon, reviewing the text messages on the burner phone. Emily and Kellen's conversations painted a picture of two people who thought they were smarter than everyone around them, who believed they could manipulate the system to get whatever they wanted. They were about to learn how wrong they were. My phone buzzed with a text from Alicia. Emily's panicking about Kellen's boat. They had plans to take it to Bar Harbor this weekend. She's asking if I know anyone who might have reported it. I typed back, "What did you tell her?" That I have no idea. She's suspicious, though. Thinks someone's targeting them specifically. Let her think that. It'll make her paranoid. Jack, are you sure about this? Emily's really upset. She should be upset. Actions have consequences. I turned off my phone and poured another bourbon. Tomorrow, I'd meet with the lawyer and officially begin the divorce proceedings. But the legal battle was just one front in this war. Emily and Kellen had humiliated me publicly, treated me like a fool, and tried to steal everything I'd worked for. They wanted a fight, they were going to get one. But it would be fought on my terms, with my rules, and I intended to win. Margaret Chen's law office was everything I'd expected. Mahogany furniture, leather-bound books, and an atmosphere that whispered expensive competence. She reviewed my evidence with the clinical detachment of a surgeon examining a tumor. This is quite comprehensive, she said, scrolling through the text messages. Your wife and her lover have been remarkably careless with their communications. What are my options? Several. Maine is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can still impact property division and spousal support. With this evidence, we can argue that your wife's infidelity demonstrates a pattern of deception that should preclude her from receiving alimony. What about the house? That's more complicated. It's marital property, acquired during the marriage. However, if we can prove that your wife was planning to abandon the marriage while you continued investing in joint assets, we might be able to argue for a larger share. Margaret leaned back in her chair. Mr. Avery, I have to ask, how did you obtain these text messages? If they were acquired illegally, we can't use them in court. Someone left them under my door. Anonymous tip. How convenient. She didn't look like she believed me, but she didn't press the issue. I'll file the divorce papers today. Your wife will be served within 48 hours. Good. What happens next? We wait for her response, begin the discovery process, and start negotiating. But Mr. Avery, I'd recommend you avoid any direct contact with your wife or her boyfriend. Don't give them ammunition to use against you. I nodded and shook her hand, but I had no intention of following that advice. Emily and Kellen had started this war. I intended to finish it. That afternoon, I drove to Pierce Technologies. Emily's Honda was in the parking lot, along with Kellen's BMW. I parked across the street and waited. At 5:30 p.m., they emerged together, laughing about something as they walked to his car. Kellen had his hand on Emily's back, guiding her like she was his property. They drove toward downtown, probably heading to dinner at one of the upscale restaurants they favored. I followed at a distance until they pulled into the parking lot of Coastal Prime, the most expensive steakhouse in town. Through the restaurant's large windows, I could see them being seated at a corner table, the same spot where they'd probably celebrated their successful deception for months. But tonight would be different. I walked into the restaurant and approached the hostess. "Excuse me, I need to deliver a message to one of your customers." The gentleman at table 12, Kellen Pierce. The young hostess looked confused. "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't typically—" "It's about his boat. There's been an accident at the marina. He needs to know immediately." Her expression changed to concern. "Oh, no. Of course, I'll get him right away." I watched from the bar as she approached their table and whispered urgently to Kellen. His face went white, and he immediately stood up, pulling out his phone. Emily looked confused and alarmed. Kellen rushed outside to make his call, leaving Emily alone at the table. I could see her through the window, checking her own phone, looking increasingly worried. After 10 minutes, Kellen returned, his face flushed with anger. He said something to Emily that made her eyes widen, then threw his napkin on the table and stormed toward the exit. I slipped out the back door and waited by his car. "Kellen!" I called out as he approached the BMW. "Fancy seeing you here." He spun around, his face contorting with rage when he saw me. "You son of a bitch! You're the one who reported my boat." "I have no idea what you're talking about." I kept my voice calm, reasonable. "I heard there was some kind of problem at the marina, though." "Something about safety violations?" "Don't play dumb with me, Jack. I know it was you." Emily appeared beside him, her face pale with anxiety. "Jack, what are you doing here?" "Having dinner." "Same as you." I smiled at her. "How's the adultery treating you, Emily?" "Everything you hoped it would be." "You bastard!" Kellen snarled, taking a step toward me. "I should kick your ass right here!" "You should try." I didn't move, didn't flinch. "But I should warn you, assault charges tend to complicate divorce proceedings. Your lawyer probably wouldn't approve." Emily grabbed Kellen's arm. "Don't. He's trying to provoke you. Smart girl," I said. "She's always been the brains of the operation, haven't you, Emily? The planning, the scheming, the careful manipulation of everyone around her." "What do you want, Jack?" Emily's voice was strained. "I want you to face the consequences of your choices. Both of you." "We're getting divorced," Kellen said. "You're getting what you want." "What I want?" I laughed. "What I wanted was a faithful wife. What I wanted was honesty. What I wanted was the basic respect that any human being deserves from their spouse. But you took all of that away from me. Jack, please, Emily started. No. I cut her off. You don't get to please me anymore. You made your choice. You chose him, his money, his promises of a better life. Fine. But don't expect me to make it easy for you. I turned and walked away, leaving them standing in the parking lot. But I wasn't done for the night. My next stop was the Anchor Inn, a seedy motel on the outskirts of town where Emily and Kellen had conducted many of their secret meetings. The desk clerk was a kid named Tommy, who'd graduated from high school with my nephew. Hey, Mr. Avery, what brings you here? I need to ask you about some guests you've had recently. Kellen Pierce and Emily Avery. They've been renting rooms here for the past few months. Tommy's expression became uncomfortable. I don't know if I should. Tommy, they've been using this place to cheat on their spouses. I'm Emily's husband, and I'm getting divorced. I just need confirmation from my lawyer. He glanced around nervously, then nodded. Yeah, they've been coming here twice a week since March, always paying cash, always ask for the same room. Number 7. Have you seen them with anyone else? Other people coming and going? Just them. But Mr. Avery, they're not very discreet, if you know what I mean. I thanked Tommy and slipped him $50 for his cooperation. Then I drove to the local newspaper office. The Harbor Light was a small weekly paper that covered local news, business developments, and social events. The editor, Sarah Morrison, was a friend from high school who'd always had a nose for scandal. Jack Avery, she exclaimed when I walked into her cluttered office. I heard about you and Emily. I'm so sorry. Thanks, Sarah. Actually, that's why I'm here. I have a story that might interest you. Her eyes lit up with professional curiosity. What kind of story? Local business owner conducting affairs with employees. Pattern of behavior, possible harassment, abuse of power. Are we talking about Kellen Pierce? I can't confirm or deny anything, but I can provide you with some documentation that might help you investigate. I handed her copies of the text messages that referenced Kellen's previous workplace incidents and his pattern of pursuing married employees. Sarah read through them quickly, her expression growing more interested by the minute. Jack, this is potentially explosive, but I need more than text messages. I need sources, verification, documentation. I understand, but maybe this gives you a starting point for your own investigation. Maybe it does. She looked up at me. What's your end game here, Jack? What do you really want? I want the truth to come out. I want people to know what kind of man Kellen Pierce really is, and what kind of woman my wife became when she got involved with him. And if that destroys their reputations, then maybe they should have thought about that before they decided to destroy my marriage. Sarah nodded slowly. I'll look into it, but Jack, be careful. Men like Kellen Pierce fight back when they're cornered. Let him fight. I'm not afraid of him. But as I drove home that night, I realized that wasn't entirely true. I wasn't afraid of Kellen personally, but I was afraid of what this war was turning me into. The man who'd confronted them in the parking lot, who'd manipulated the hostess at the restaurant, who was systematically dismantling their lives, that wasn't the Jack Avery I'd been 6 months ago. Emily had changed me, and not for the better. The question was whether I could live with who I was becoming, or if revenge would ultimately destroy me along with them. I poured myself a bourbon and sat in my empty house, surrounded by the ghosts of my former life. Tomorrow, Emily would be served with divorce papers. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. But tonight I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what I'd lost and what I was willing to do to get even. The divorce papers were served on a Friday morning while Emily was at work. I know because Alicia texted me immediately. Emily just called me crying. She can't believe you're actually going through with it. I typed back, what did she expect? She thought you'd try to work things out. She's talking about fighting the divorce, claiming emotional distress. Let her try. My lawyer has enough evidence to bury her in court. But Emily's reaction was nothing compared to Kellen's. According to Alicia, he'd gone ballistic when he learned about the divorce filing, screaming at Emily in his office about how this would complicate his own divorce proceedings. He's worried about the publicity, Alicia reported. His wife's lawyer is apparently very aggressive, and this affair could cost him millions in his settlement. Perfect. I'd hoped the divorce would create problems for both of them, and it seemed to be working even better than expected. That afternoon, Sarah Morrison called with an update on her investigation. Jack, I've been digging into Kellen Pierce's employment practices, and you were right. There's a pattern here. I found 2 former employees who are willing to talk about inappropriate behavior, and I'm working on getting the sealed harassment complaint unsealed. How long will that take? A few weeks, maybe a month? But Jack, I have to warn you. Kellen's starting to suspect someone's feeding me information. He called the paper yesterday, asking about our sources. What did you tell him? Nothing. But he's not stupid. He knows this is connected to your divorce somehow. That evening, my suspicions were confirmed. Kellen showed up at my house just after sunset, his BMW screeching into my driveway like he owned the place. I watched him storm up my front walk through the window, then open the door before he could knock. Kellen, what a pleasant surprise. Cut the shit, Jack, we need to talk. No, we don't. I started to close the door, but he pushed it open and stepped inside uninvited. You're going to listen to me, you pathetic piece of shit. I know what you're doing. The boat, the newspaper, the harassment of Emily. It ends now. Get out of my house. I'm not going anywhere until we settle this like men. I laughed. Like men? You fucked my wife behind my back for 6 months and now you want to settle things like men? Emily was unhappy. She came to me. Emily was married. To me. That used to mean something. Kellen stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his height advantage. Look, I get it. You're hurt. Your pride is wounded. But Emily's with me now, and there's nothing you can do to change that. I'm not trying to change it. I'm trying to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people you both are. You want to play hardball? His voice dropped to a menacing whisper. I have more money than you'll ever see. I can make your life very difficult. Threatening me now? That's a bold strategy, especially since I'm recording this conversation. His eyes widened as he noticed my phone in my hand, the recording app clearly visible on the screen. You son of a bitch! Get out of my house, Kellen. Now, before I call the police and have you arrested for trespassing and making threats. He stared at me for a long moment, his face flushed with rage. Then he turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. I immediately sent the recording to my lawyer and to Sarah Morrison. If Kellen wanted to escalate this conflict, I'd give him more than he bargained for. The next morning brought unexpected news. Gordy called at 6 a.m., his voice tight with concern. Jack, you need to get down to the marina right away. There's been an incident. What kind of incident? Someone vandalized your truck, broke the windows, slashed the tires, spray-painted some choice words on the sides. I drove to the marina in Emily's old car. She'd left it behind when she moved in with Kellen, and surveyed the damage. My truck looked like it had been attacked with a baseball bat and a can of black paint. The words loser and asshole were scrawled across the doors in dripping letters. Any witnesses? I asked Gordy. None that are talking. But Jack, this has Kellen Pierce written all over it. Can you prove it? Not legally. But everyone knows he was here last night, arguing with some of the dock workers about his boat situation. I took photos of the damage and called the police. Officer Martinez arrived within 20 minutes, took a report, and promised to investigate. But we both knew nothing would come of it without witnesses or physical evidence. I'm sorry, Mr. Avery, he said as he finished his paperwork. Vandalism cases are tough to prosecute without clear evidence. I understand, but I want this documented in case there are future incidents. After he left, I called my insurance company and arranged for the truck to be towed to a repair shop. Then I called Sarah Morrison. Sarah, I need to accelerate your timeline on the Kellen Pierce story. Things are escalating, and I need that information public as soon as possible. What happened? I told her about the vandalism and Kellen's visit to my house. She listened without interrupting, then sighed heavily. Jack, I'm worried about you. This is getting dangerous. I can handle Kellen Pierce. Can you? Because from where I'm sitting it looks like you're poking a bear with a stick. Maybe. But that bear destroyed my marriage and humiliated me in front of the entire town. He doesn't get to walk away clean. And if he escalates further? What if next time it's not just your truck? I considered that possibility. Kellen was clearly unstable, and men with his kind of money and ego could be unpredictable when cornered. I'll be careful, I promised. Be more than careful, be smart. That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. Emily stood on my front porch, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd seen her in years. Jack, can we please talk? Just for a few minutes? Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat on the edge of our old couch, my old couch, and twisted her wedding ring nervously. She was still wearing it, I noticed. I heard about your truck, she said quietly. I'm sorry. Are you? Or are you here to gloat? I would never gloat about something like that. Despite everything that's happened between us, I don't want to see you hurt. You don't want to see me hurt? I stared at her in disbelief. Emily, you've been hurting me for 6 months. Every lie, every secret meeting, every time you came home to me after being with him. You were hurting me. Tears started flowing down her cheeks. I know I hurt you and I hate myself for it. But Jack, this has to stop. Kellen's getting desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. Is that a threat? It's a warning. He's not the man I thought he was. He's got a temper, and he's used to getting his way. So you're afraid of him now? She nodded miserably. Sometimes. When he gets angry, he gets this look in his eyes like he's capable of anything. Then leave him. I can't. Why not? Because I burned every bridge to be with him. I destroyed our marriage, lost most of my friends, ruined my reputation. He's all I have left. I felt a moment of pity for her, followed immediately by anger. You made those choices, Emily. You chose him over me, chose his money over our life together, chose deception over honesty. Now you have to live with the consequences. I know, but Jack, please, call off whatever you're planning, the newspaper investigation, the legal maneuvering, all of it. Let's just get divorced quietly and move on with our lives. No. Why not? What's the point of all this revenge? It won't bring back our marriage. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where her roses were beginning to bloom. The point is justice, Emily. The point is consequences. You and Kellen thought you could treat people like disposable objects, manipulate and deceive and destroy lives without ever paying a price. You were wrong. So this is about punishment? This is about the truth. About making sure everyone knows exactly who you really are. Emily was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. I loved you once, Jack. I really did. I know, that's what makes this so much worse. She left without another word, and I watched her drive away in Kellen's BMW. She looked broken, defeated, nothing like the confident woman who'd walked out of this house a week ago. But I couldn't afford to feel sorry for her, not when Kellen was escalating his attacks, not when the real battle was just beginning. That evening, Sarah Morrison called with the news I'd been waiting for. Jack, I'm running the story tomorrow. Front page, full investigation into Kellen Pierce's pattern of inappropriate relationships with employees. I've got 3 women on the record, documentation of the sealed harassment complaint, and evidence of his using company resources to conduct personal affairs. What about Emily? She's mentioned, but not by name. I'm referring to her as a current employee who left her husband to pursue a relationship with Pierce. Good. When does it hit the stands? Tomorrow morning. But Jack, after this publishes, there's no going back. Kellen's going to come after you with everything he's got. Let him try. I'm ready. But as I hung up the phone and poured myself a bourbon, I wondered if that was really true. Was I ready for whatever Kellen Pierce might do when his carefully constructed world came crashing down around him? I guess I was about to find out. The war was entering its final phase, and only one of us would be left standing when the smoke cleared. The harbor light hit the stands at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. By 6:30, my phone was ringing nonstop. Jack, have you seen the paper? Gordy's voice was excited. Sarah Morrison just destroyed Kellen Pierce. Front page, full expose, local CEO's pattern of workplace affairs exposed. This is brutal. I walked to my front porch and picked up my copy. The headline was even better than Gordy had described. Sarah had done her homework. Photos of Kellen, quotes from 3 former employees detailing his inappropriate behavior, financial records showing company money used for personal expenses, and a timeline of his affairs that painted him as a serial predator who used his position to exploit vulnerable women. Emily was mentioned in the final paragraph. Pierce's most recent relationship involves a married employee who left her husband after a 6-month affair. The woman's divorce proceedings are currently underway, with court documents alleging a pattern of deception and financial manipulation. My phone buzzed with a text from Alicia. Emily's hysterical. She's locked herself in Kellen's bathroom and won't come out. He's screaming at everyone, threatening to sue the newspaper. It's chaos here. I typed back, "Where are you?" "At Kellen's house." Emily called me crying, begging me to come over. "Jack, I think she's having a breakdown." "That's not my problem anymore. Please, she needs help." I stared at that message for a long moment. Part of me, the part that had loved Emily for 6 years, wanted to rush over and comfort her. But the larger part, the part that had been systematically betrayed and humiliated, felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "She made her choice," I typed. "Now she lives with it." The next few hours brought a parade of phone calls. Margaret Chen called to congratulate me on the newspaper story and inform me that it would significantly strengthen our divorce case. Mrs. Carmichael called to share the town gossip. Apparently, Pierce Technologies was in chaos, with employees calling in sick and investors asking uncomfortable questions. But the most interesting call came from an unexpected source: Kellen's wife, Victoria Pierce. "Mr. Avery? This is Victoria Pierce. I think we should meet." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in the next town over, away from prying eyes and local gossips. Victoria was everything Emily wasn't: elegant, composed, with the kind of quiet confidence that came from old money and good breeding. She was also clearly furious. "I want to thank you," she said as we sat down with our coffee. "My husband has been cheating for years, but I never had proof until now. I'm sorry you had to find out this way." "Don't be. I'm grateful. That newspaper story gave me everything I need to destroy him in our divorce." She opened her purse and pulled out a thick manila folder. "I thought you might be interested in these. Financial records, business documents, personal correspondence. Kellen's been very careless with his record keeping." I flipped through the documents, my eyes widening as I absorbed the information. Bank statements showing payments to multiple women, business records indicating fraud and embezzlement, personal emails detailing his various affairs, and his contempt for the women he'd seduced. "Why are you giving me this?" Victoria's smile was ice cold. "Because my husband destroyed your marriage, and you destroyed his reputation. I thought we might help each other finish the job. What do you want in return?" "Nothing. I have my own lawyers, my own plans for Kellen. But I thought your wife should know exactly what kind of man she's chosen to build her future with." I studied the documents more carefully. There were bank records showing Kellen had been financially supporting multiple mistresses simultaneously, business emails revealing his plan to use Emily to gain inside information about his competitors, and personal correspondence that made it clear he viewed her as nothing more than a temporary diversion. He's planning to dump her, I realized. Within 6 months, according to his emails to his lawyer. Apparently, the novelty is already wearing off, and her divorce is becoming more expensive than he anticipated. I felt a complex mixture of emotions, satisfaction that Emily was about to get exactly what she deserved, but also a strange sadness for the woman I'd once loved. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we both get our revenge. I file for divorce next week with enough evidence to take half of everything he owns, and you..." She smiled. "You get to watch your wife realize she destroyed her marriage for a man who never intended to keep her." That evening, I called Alicia. "How's Emily doing?" "Terrible. She hasn't eaten in 2 days, barely sleeps. Kellen's been treating her like dirt since the newspaper story broke, blaming her for the whole mess. I have some information she needs to see." "What kind of information?" "The kind that will open her eyes about who Kellen Pierce really is." I arranged to meet Alicia at a diner outside town. She looked exhausted, stressed from playing mediator in a situation that was spiraling out of control. "Jack, I'm worried about Emily. She's talking about hurting herself. She's being dramatic. Emily's always been dramatic when things don't go her way. This is different. She's realized she threw away everything for a man who doesn't love her, and now she has nothing left." I handed Alicia copies of Victoria Pierce's documents. "Show her these. Let her see exactly what Kellen thinks of her." Alicia read through the papers, her face growing paler with each page. "Oh my God. He's been calling her pathetic, desperate. He told his lawyer she was adequate in bed but exhausting emotionally. Keep reading. He's planning to end things with her as soon as his divorce is finalized. He says she's served her purpose and he's ready to upgrade to a younger model." Alicia looked up at me with horror. "Jack, this will destroy her." "Good." Maybe it's time she understood what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you trust. "You really hate her, don't you?" I considered that question carefully. "No, I hate what she did, what she became. But the woman I married, the woman I loved for 6 years, she died the day she chose Kellen over me. What's left is just a stranger who happens to look like my wife." Alicia delivered the documents to Emily that night. According to her report the next morning, Emily's reaction had been everything I'd hoped for and more. She went completely silent when she read them, Alicia told me over the phone. Just sat there for 20 minutes, reading every page twice. Then she started laughing, this horrible, broken laugh that scared me. What did she say? That she finally understood. That she'd destroyed everything for a man who saw her as disposable, just like she'd treated you. Is she still at Kellen's? No. She packed her things and left this morning. She's staying at a motel downtown. Which motel? The Anchor Inn, room 7. The same room where she'd conducted her affair. The irony was perfect. But I wasn't done yet. There was one final move to make, one last piece of the puzzle to put in place. I called Sarah Morrison. "Sarah, I need you to run a follow-up story. I have new information about Kellen Pierce's financial dealings and his pattern of manipulating women." "What kind of information?" "Bank records, business documents, personal correspondence, enough to finish him completely." "Jack, are you sure about this? The man's already been destroyed professionally. This could push him over the edge." "He pushed me over the edge 6 months ago when he decided to seduce my wife. Turnabout is fair play." The follow-up story ran 3 days later. This time, the headline read, "Pierce CEO's Financial Crimes and Serial Affairs Exposed." The article detailed Kellen's embezzlement, his systematic exploitation of female employees, and his pattern of discarding women once they'd served his purposes. The reaction was swift and devastating. Pierce Technologies' board of directors called an emergency meeting and voted to terminate Kellen immediately. The district attorney announced an investigation into his business practices. His remaining friends and social connections abandoned him en masse. Within a week, Kellen Pierce had lost his job, his reputation, his wife, his fortune, and his future. He was facing criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and complete social ostracism. But the most satisfying moment came when Emily called me. "Jack?" Her voice was small, broken. "Can I please see you? Just once?" We met at the harbor, on the same dock where I'd first discovered Kellen's yacht. Emily looked like she'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. Hollow-eyed, gaunt, wearing clothes that hung loose on her diminished frame. "I'm sorry," she said without preamble. "I'm so sorry for everything I did to you, to us. I know you are. I threw away the best thing in my life for a man who saw me as a joke. I humiliated myself, destroyed our marriage, lost everything that mattered. And for what? For 6 months, with a man who was planning to discard me like garbage." "Yes, you did." She looked at me with desperate eyes. "Is there any chance, any possibility that we could try again? I know I don't deserve it, but..." No. The word hung between us like a death sentence. Emily's face crumpled, and she began to sob, deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from her soul. "I don't blame you," she whispered. "I hate myself for what I've become. I hate what I did to you, to us. I would give anything to take it back. But you can't take it back. That's the thing about choices, Emily. Once you make them, you have to live with the consequences. What happens now? To me, I mean? I looked at this broken woman who had once been my wife and felt nothing but cold indifference. Now you figure out how to live with what you've done. You find a way to rebuild your life from nothing, just like I had to do when you destroyed mine. I don't know how. Neither did I, but I figured it out. Emily wiped her tears and stood up straighter, trying to find some dignity in her defeat. The divorce papers say you want the house, the cars, everything. I'm not going to fight it. You deserve to keep what's yours. I appreciate that. And Jack? I know you'll never forgive me, and I understand why. But I want you to know that loving you was the most real thing I ever felt. Losing you is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Goodbye, Emily. I walked away and didn't look back. Behind me, I could hear her crying, but the sound didn't move me. The woman I'd loved was gone, had been gone for months. What remained was just the shell of someone who'd made terrible choices and was finally facing the consequences. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. I kept the house, the cars, and most of our assets. Emily moved to Boston, where she found work as a secretary for a quarter of her previous salary. Kellen Pierce was sentenced to 5 years in prison for embezzlement and fraud. I never saw either of them again. On a warm spring evening, I sat on my back porch with a beer, looking at Emily's rose garden. The flowers were blooming beautifully, more vibrant than they'd ever been when she tended them. I'd learned to care for them myself, and somehow they'd flourished under my attention. My phone rang. It was Gordy calling to invite me to his daughter's wedding. You should come, Jack. It's time you got back out there, started living again. I am living, Gordy. Maybe for the first time in years. You know what I mean. Find someone new, someone who deserves you. I considered that possibility. Maybe someday I would find love again. Maybe someday I'd trust someone enough to share my life with them. But for now, I was content with the peace I'd found, the justice I'd achieved, and the knowledge that actions truly did have consequences. Emily had wanted freedom, excitement, a life of luxury and passion. Instead, she'd found betrayal, humiliation, and loss. Kellen had wanted power, control, and the ability to take whatever he desired without consequences. Instead, he'd found disgrace, imprisonment, and the complete destruction of everything he'd built. And me? I'd wanted revenge, justice, and the satisfaction of seeing them pay for what they'd done. I'd gotten all three,